How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Sponge 5000. Today is May 21st, 2021, and today we're going to take a look at not one but two tropical disturbances in the Atlantic. As now the Atlantic hurricane season is starting to heat up, headed into the month of June and into late May. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather records. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather records. So let's begin by taking a look at the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook, and you see there are two disturbances. We have one that's closer to home, right around just off the coast of Texas, and another one which is well out into the open Atlantic. However, it is very close to the island of Bermuda. So let's first take a look at disturbance number two, which is which is Invest 91L, which is very close to home. It's very just off the coast of Texas, and as you can see, it currently has a medium percent chance of developing over the next 5 days, where we do have a medium chance throughout the next 48 hours, and then a medium chance throughout the next 5 days towards the lower end at 40%. So this does have a legitimate chance of developing just off the coast of Texas, and the general direction it's expected to go is mainly towards the northwest, and whether this becomes a tropical depression, tropical storm, or just is a plain old regular low pressure, it is expected to make landfall onto the Texas coast later tomorrow. So let's first take a look at the current IR loop to see how this disturbance is doing, how Invest 91L is doing, and you see that it doesn't look very organized at all. I mean, there's just a lot of dry air on the southern side, and it's pretty much spiraling right around the center of circulation, which is right around this area. We do have some convection on the northeastern side of the storm. However, it is certainly not enough to really make this any more than just a regular low pressure system. And currently, the low pressure system is non-tropical, so it doesn't have any sort of tropical characteristics as of right now, and it's as a result of just the sea surface temperatures just aren't warm enough to make this fully tropical just yet. And this low pressure system is getting a lot of help from the cold air that's associated with a mid-level to upper level low that's centered right around Texas. So it's getting a lot of help from mainly unstable air. And if this does ever develop into some sort of tropical depression or tropical storm, more likely than not, I'd expect it to be a subtropical storm, because if we take a look at the sea surface temperatures throughout the Atlantic, let me show you guys sea surface temperatures. You see so the center of circulation is right around this area, and it's pretty much at around 25 degrees Celsius, which is just below the 80-degree mark, which isn't sufficient enough for tropical development in most cases. However, it is at least still warm enough to at least make this trough at least somewhat make it at least somewhat tropical, and tropical enough to categorize it as potentially a tropical storm or a subtropical storm. And since it's getting a lot of help from the unstable air by this upper level low that's centered around the Midwest and into Texas, it does certainly have the possibility of developing over the next 5 days, and as it comes closer to the Texas coast. So if we were to take a look at the wind shear for this storm as of right now, you see that while most of the Atlantic is under just very strong wind shear, there is that small portion just right around the Gulf of Mexico where the wind shear is relatively light, because there is an upper level low that's right around the Midwest that's bringing strong northerly wind component in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And since this north wind sort of coincides with the lower level winds as a result of the Coriolis effect, there isn't a ton of wind shear in this region, because if we take a look all throughout the Atlantic, most of the upper level winds are coming from the west, which is pretty much directly against what the lower level winds in the completely opposite direction of where the lower level winds are going. So as a result, there's strong wind shear all throughout the Atlantic. However, in this area, since the upper level winds are shifting north just enough to where it would coincide with the lower level winds, there is an area where wind shear is relatively light in this region. However, it isn't a large area, so it is going to be difficult to forecast whether this does develop or not, because it only really has a small area where conditions should be somewhat conducive for tropical development. It really all depends on the exact track, because every mile matters the when the area of favorable conditions is this small. So it's going to be difficult to forecast whether this develops or not. So as a result, the National Hurricane Center is giving this a medium chance, because while there is an area where the conditions, especially in the upper levels, are somewhat conducive, it isn't a very large area. So any slight variation in the track could completely destroy or could completely take away any chance of tropical storm formation with this trough in the Gulf of Mexico. So we have to keep a close eye on the wind shear for that region. And in terms of the forecast of what the GFS model is saying, the GFS currently isn't forecasting any sort of development, and the reason why is because there's just going to be way too much dry air. There's just going to be a lot of dry air around this storm, and while it could maybe develop into a subtropical storm with dry air thanks to the instability and the warmer sea surface temperatures and the relative lack of wind shear, it's going to be very difficult with all the dry air to become just very potent, because that dry air is obviously stable, and although there's unstable air, it isn't really enough to really make this a very strong storm. So as a result, it's just going to have a tough time developing thanks to the amount of dry air that's going to be associated with it. And hurricanes need a lot of convection, because that's really how air molecules are able to move into that lower pressure. When there's a lot of convection, when the air molecules are rising, it creates sort of an open space along the surface for air molecules to filter in, which enhances the wind speed. And when there isn't a lot of convection or evaporation occurring or buoyancy in the air molecules, it becomes difficult for air molecules to filter into that low pressure system at a rate fast enough to make it a very strong storm when it comes to wind speed. So as a result, it's gonna have a difficult time developing into a tropical storm. And you see that on the southern side, it's just gonna be sheared by just a lot of dry air, and it's gonna hinder the storm all the way till it makes landfall in Texas. So the dry air is certainly something we need to keep in mind. However, this still does have a chance of developing thanks to, like I said, the relatively lack wind shear. There's going to be the water temperatures, while they aren't exactly warm enough for technically warm enough for tropical cyclone development, they aren't so cold that it'll completely diminish the chance, as around 78-degree water is enough for, in some cases, to develop a tropical cyclone. And also, it's going to get some help from the upper level low that's centered in the Midwest, and there's going to be unstable air to make this potentially subtropical storm. So we need to keep a close eye on this. And one of your main questions will be, what will be the impacts for Louisiana, Texas, if this does end up becoming a tropical storm, or it doesn't at all? Well, the main threat with this will primarily be the heavy rain and maybe some gusty winds on the eastern side of the storm, right around southwestern Louisiana into southeast Texas, where you see that over the next 5 days, we could see potentially up to 3 inches of rain in some areas right around the Houston area and headed into southwestern Louisiana, and which is a place that just got pounded by a ton of rain over the past several days, thanks to a blocking pattern over the eastern half of the United States, forcing a lot just very strong southerly flow, bringing a lot of precipitation into the Midwest. So the rain will primarily be the main concern with this. Maybe some gustier winds, and it could maybe create a rip current risk. But I assume that since it's raining and stuff, you probably wouldn't want to go into the beach anyways. So I wouldn't say it's a major concern. However, do not underestimate rip currents by all means because they're one of the leading cause of weather-related deaths in the United States, and it's unfortunately like a thing that could be easily avoidable as long as you just stay out of the water when there's high rip currents. So make sure to keep in mind of that throughout the Texas coast and Louisiana. And in terms of the sheer strength of this storm over the next couple hours, you see that not much strengthening is expected. There's only a medium chance this even develops into a tropical depression, and if it does somehow develop into a tropical storm, then I'd say maybe the peak is like 50 miles per hour, or more likely it's gonna be at the very low end of the tropical storm spectrum, more around 50 miles per hour, because this isn't going to have enough time over water to really develop into just a very strong storm. And like I said, the area where wind shear is light is very small, so it's only so much time it could hang out in that area where wind shear is relatively light. And again, the dry air will hinder this from really from developing into anything more than a weak tropical storm. So the good news is that this isn't expected to be strong. This is mainly going to be a rain event, which could cause flooding. Do not underestimate that because we've seen very weak tropical storms bring just billions of dollars in damages because of flooding alone. While by no means I'm saying it's going to be anywhere near that situation, it's at least good to not underestimate what a tropical storm could do when it comes to flooding. And it's certainly a possibility with around 3 to 5 inches of rain right around Texas and Louisiana. So keep that in mind with this tropical storm. But outside of this tropical disturbance we're watching in the Gulf of Mexico, we're also watching tropical what will likely become tropical storm Anna within the next 48 hours, and or at the best case within the next 5 days. So you see 90% chance of tropical cyclone formation. And if we were to take a look at the current IR loop for a lot of the Atlantic, you see that now the storm is really starting to get a little bit more convection, especially on the northern portion of this storm, as it pretty much separated from this extratropical cyclone, which it was embedded in yesterday, and now it moved a little bit further eastward, and now we're seeing a little bit of convection. There is still unstable air helping this storm, and you see there's still a lot of dry air within center circulation, which really shows that there's still a lot of colder air right around going into the center of circulation, really helping the storm's convection and really enhancing the potential wind speed by how much unstable air there is right around this low pressure system. And it's expected to move further south and eastward, and it's gonna head into an environment where the sea surface temperatures will be slightly higher. While they won't be necessarily very high, it's still going to be below 80 degrees most likely. It's at least going to be in the upper 70s, so that certainly could help the hurricane really the tropical cyclone really get its act together over the next several days. And it's likely that this will develop into tropical storm. You see it does enter an area where temperatures are in the upper 70s right around Bermuda, and it should strengthen as a result. In terms of what the GFS model is forecasting over the next several days, let me zoom out to the North Atlantic map to see the forecasted radar for what will be tropical storm Anna. Give me just 1 second. Let me show you guys the forecasted radar for a lot of the Atlantic, the northern Atlantic, and you see that here's tropical storm and 1,004 millibars, and it's expecting to come closer to Bermuda, so we could see strong northwesterly winds. However, this is expected to drift off into the northeast, not really becoming much of a threat to anyone outside of maybe Bermuda with some high surf, gusty winds, and some rain. So this shouldn't be much of a concern at all. The wind shear is just going to be too strong at that point by the time it reaches Bermuda for any further strengthening to maybe pose a threat in terms of surf along the east coast. And this should be gone very, very soon. I'd say right around the end of this weekend on Sunday. This should drift out into the northeast, not becoming much of a threat to anyone, which is certainly good news. However, the fact that we're seeing almost this much tropical development in the month of May, where we're seeing two potential disturbances, really shows that really gives me the concern that this could be a more active hurricane season, and I do still believe that the National Hurricane Center should push back the hurricane season a month because we've been seeing too many storms in May at this point, where we're already gonna be in the letter B when it comes to hurricane names. When it comes to hurricane names, where Tropical Storm Bill is certainly possible over the next several days. So we definitely need to keep that in mind throughout Texas and Louisiana and Bermuda. Just make sure to watch out for some heavy rain and gusty winds. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather calls. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather calls. And I hope you guys have a good day.